Joining us now with key insight is Senate Democrat Chris Coons from Delaware. He is also a national co-chair of President Biden's 2024 campaign, and he is a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, always good to have you. Thanks so much for the time today.
Good to be on with you.
Let me start with Gaza. Just your reaction to this news. Obviously heartbreaking, this airstrike, the death of these aid workers from the World Central Kitchen. Your reaction to this?
Jose Andres is a personal friend, and I co-hosted a briefing by Jose Andres and the World Central Kitchen staff of senators just before we passed the appropriations bill and went on recess. This is a tragic loss of life. Too many aid workers have been killed already in Israel's ongoing war against Hamas in Gaza. And this latest loss of 7 innocent, dedicated aid workers is just the latest tragedy of this ongoing war. I think there needs to be accountability. There needs to be a prompt follow-up by the Israeli Defense Forces to explain how they struck these 2 vehicles that were clearly marked by World Central Kitchen logos and were in a deconflicted area, according to press reports.
I hear you say that there should be accountability. Israel says that it will investigate. Do you believe that the investigation should be conducted by perhaps a more independent authority? Who do you think should be leading this investigation?
Look, the Israelis and the IDF are most likely to have the relevant, timely information about why they carried out the strike that they did. But I think that in the United States, Senate will also be reviewing that information and looking at other sources of information to reach our conclusions about whether this was just an accident in the fog of war or whether it's part of the way in which the IDF has been conducting this war, which in some ways at some times has been too reckless and has caused too many civilian casualties. The Israelis typically go to great lengths to notify civilians before they carry out strikes, to respect the rule of law and to hold accountable their troops. But this war in Gaza has been one that has strained that tradition. And so I will look for a robust investigation and follow-up.
Senator, how concerned are you about the potential for a further risk of escalation? Iran saying and issuing this warning that it will punish Israel after that deadly attack on its consulate in Syria, but also saying, despite the U.S. saying it had no knowledge of this attack, saying that it holds the U.S. answerable.
Well, look, there has been a real risk of regional escalation since the beginning, since October 7th, when Hamas carried out a brutal terrorist attack that massacred roughly 1,200 Israeli civilians. The response by Israel, by the IDF, and then the counter response by Iranian proxies in the region, by Hezbollah in Lebanon, by the Houthis in the Red Sea, by Iranian-backed militias in Iraq. All of those have posed a real risk of escalation. I recently went to the region and visited Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, Israel, and Oman. And I think President Biden has done a good job of containing the risk of regional escalation since the beginning of this war by Israel against Hamas. But Iran's response to Israel's attack may well be the next step or stage in escalation regionally. I think the United States' deterrence of Iran's aggression in the region is key to preventing it from escalating further.
Let me turn to more domestic news. In the elections here, Trump is out campaigning, as has been Biden. Biden is out with this new campaign attacking Trump and essentially linking him to the decision to overturn Roe versus Wade, that Supreme Court decision. Biden campaign now saying that it believes after these 2 decisions from Florida that Florida is potentially winnable. How so? How do you expect Biden to win Florida? What would that look like?
Look, former President Trump has long bragged that he made the decisions that put on the Supreme Court a new conservative majority that has taken away reproductive freedoms from Americans, that the reversal of Roe versus Wade, a decades-long, deeply embedded in our society, critical precedent by the Supreme Court, the overturning of Roe versus Wade is something that President Trump has described as one of his greatest accomplishments. So now we'll put to the test whether or not millions of Floridians go to the polls and vote to restore reproductive freedom or vote to embrace a 6-week abortion ban. It is unusual for women who are pregnant to even know that they are pregnant that early in their pregnancy. And so this is just the latest of many examples across the country of Republican state legislatures or other Republican leaders pushing the boundaries now that Roe versus Wade is no longer there to protect reproductive freedom nationally. So I would agree that Florida is now in play because this will mobilize millions of voters to come up to vote, to take their stance on reproductive freedom. It will put it in play as a critical issue in this statewide election in Florida.
And does that mean that you believe that there's also a Senate seat perhaps to pick up for the Democrats in Florida?
The two go hand in hand. If it is a competitive state in the presidential election, it'll be a competitive state for a Senate seat as well.
Okay. Let me turn to you're just back from your visit to certain African countries like Zambia, Angola, Botswana. You're obviously a leading voice on U.S.-Africa policy. Talk to us a little bit about that trip and what you saw and what was accomplished there.
Yes, I'm a little bit jet lagged, so forgive me if I'm misstating a few things here. A significant group of senators, 5 senators, visited Cabo Verde, Angola, Zambia, Malawi, and Botswana. Botswana and Cabo Verde are great examples of multi-party democracies that are stable, that have low corruption and high government service, and where our partnership has made a lasting difference. The picture that you're showing right now is from a community school in Malawi that was constructed with U.S. assistance. Malawi and Zambia and Angola are different countries. They're countries where there are critical public health challenges, where there is significant poverty, where there is hunger because of drought and climate change, and where American investment through PEPFAR, the program to combat HIV/AIDS that was started by President Bush and has been sustained by every president since then, PEPFAR has made a huge difference. The life expectancy of the average person in Zambia, in Malawi, in Angola has increased by 50% because of our investments in combating transmissible diseases like tuberculosis, malaria, and HIV. So we had a chance to visit hospitals and teaching schools for nurses, a chance to visit Millennium Challenge Compact projects that are contributing to economic development, and a chance to visit schools and get a sense of what difference America makes in this region. This is also a region that is critical to the great power competition between the United States, Russia, and China because of the vast storehouse of critical minerals and strategic minerals that are in the north of Zambia, as well as in parts of Angola and Malawi. Our principal interest is in promoting democracy and stability, in seeing the people of this region develop on their own terms and pursue their own futures, but frankly also to push back on Russian and Chinese influence in these countries, particularly Angola and Zambia, that for many years were close allies and partners of China and Russia, and are today much more open to partnering with the United States on their path forward.
Well, it's interesting. You sort of took the words out of my mouth. I wanted to ask if you think the geopolitical events as of late have made Africa a more, have made the relationship between U.S. and the continent of Africa more urgent, more attractive because of certain geopolitical things that have happened in the last few years or so.
Well, the United States has a long and deep relationship with the continent of Africa. It is the youngest continent. There is significant growth in their economies and their population. There's huge natural resources and human resources. And the United States is uniquely blessed with a very large African diaspora and the possibility of positive relations with countries across the continent. We also have difficult, fraught chapters of our history with Africa. And I think it's important for American leaders, for senators, governors, members of the House of Representatives, members of the president's cabinet, and our president to visit Africa and to see firsthand how it's possible for us to strengthen and improve our relations. China sees the promise of Africa. China has been opening embassies, has been investing in infrastructure, and has become the largest trading partner with the growing economies of Africa. The United States needs to be engaged as well, not just because of competition with China, but because there is enormous potential for our future, for exports of American companies, for partnership with countries that want to become democracies, and for the competition for the creative and the growing young minds and young populations of the African continent.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people certainly are hoping for a mutually beneficial relationship, certainly as someone of the African diaspora and someone who was born, spent my first few years in Africa. I can certainly sort of get behind that. Senator Chris Coons from Delaware. Senator, thanks so much.